Well, this is Rob Keone. He started his career at MCC as our learning technician in the Psychology Instructional Resource Center, which we call our PERC lab. And he started in 2014 all the way through 2022. While in this role, he taught as adjunct for our department, starting in 2016 until he was hired as our residential faculty member in 2023, so just last year. Rob teaches several courses, including Introduction to Psychology, Statistics, and Psychology and Culture. He serves in several capacities within the department, including being our textbook publisher's technology liaison, our Introduction to Psychology textbook publisher. And he also serves as our faculty computer and technology lead. He says lead, I call him guru. Rob is active with many activities outside of the classroom, including being a campus club advisor and department assessment coordinator, or DAC. And we are very grateful for that because, as I just mentioned, he just, got hired in our department. So that's a big role. Rob's philosophy is to instill in his students a love of psychology and to teach them the practical application it has in their everyday lives. So thank you very much.
Is the presentation on?
It's on the desktop. So if you activate sharing. It's on the right side of the desktop, so you probably want to open it first.
Okay.
Hide that window that's over there.
Let me get rid of that. Get rid of that. And
See it there? Yep. And then you open. Well, you're the computer guru. What do I say?
Yeah, I should put that on there. All right, and then we're in.
Yep, and if you don't mind going back to Zoom.
Okay, so let me go back to Zoom, and then we're gonna.
You can close that. We're already signed in.
Shoot.
Awesome, I can see it. I'm online.
Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Lee, and thank you for letting me come and participate in this. Let me just first of all start by saying I am not an assessment expert by any means. So for me, as I'm sure there were for a lot of our DAC members, there was kind of a learning curve. But one of the things that when we brought this to our department, one of the things that we discovered was going to be a benefit for us was we've got a little bit larger department, but our department is close. Like we're very connected with one another. And so when Lee and I brought this to the department, they were on board. I mean, that's one of the great things that has been a benefit for us. And I would say for anybody who's doing assessment like this, that's going to be one of the number one steps is getting your department, your faculty on board. But as we did that, we started asking ourselves the question of what should MCC students be learning. So we started with our general education outcomes, or 4 Cs, and communication, critical thinking, culture and global engagement, and civic engagement. And one of the things that we were doing before we even started the DAC process was we've been through this process. We've been doing an assessment in our department for critical thinking. We've been doing that for several semesters. And so what we decided to do is we took a look at our general education outcomes, sure, 4 Cs, and then we took a look at our department's program student learning outcomes for our AA with psychology emphasis. And there are 11 of them, and these are them kind of right there. And then what we did was we started looking at the overlay between our general education outcomes and our PSLOs. And we started to kind of see a pattern. And we did the same thing. We did a curriculum map. I don't have mine up here, but we spent a lot of time, first of all, talking about our our assessment philosophy as a department, kind of how we look at assessment and the way that we want to approach it. And then we spent a lot of time doing our curriculum map and started to find different things lined up. And as we did that, we realized there were three areas that we wanted to focus on. First of all, the middle one is critical thinking, which is something that we've, again, been already doing. That lined up with our PSLO 5, which is locate, interpret, and evaluate research findings. And so we're going to continue on with the critical thinking assessment, and we're going to go into some of the data for that. And then on the right, what's happening is we split our department up into two groups. So Lee took one group with the instructors who are teaching research methods, because we saw that the program research or the class research methods fit really nicely with our communication, general education, and also 4, 7, and 10. So these three PSLOs. And so what Lee did was she met with several of the faculty that were part of that group, and they designed, and I'm gonna go over this in just a second, but they designed an assessment for that. And then I took a group of faculty as well, and we decided to concentrate on the first three of our PSLOs. And the reason for that was because we saw that those three lined up perfectly with our Psych 101 program, which is also one of the big classes that we teach. And so those are the three focus, or the three areas that we decided to focus on. And so we started with the critical thinking analysis, and we evaluated that in 4 areas. So the first one is identify the topic, subject, inquiry. 2 is select appropriate resources. 3 is apply resources to draw conclusions, and then 4 is evaluate conclusions, solution problem. So this is what we've been using as far as our critical thinking assessment up to this point. We did a pre and post with 100, 200 level students. We've already collected data for 6 sections with, those are the population sizes. And then if you look at our rubric, again, across the top, we've got 4 levels. So level 0 is no submission, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Representing 4 is proficient, 3 is developing proficiency, 2 is beginning, and then 1 is not proficient. And for the critical thinking assessment, there were specific questions that are lined up with these different guidelines that we've got. And so questions 1 through 7 were our evaluation number 1, 9 through 11, 12 through 14, and 13 through 17. So again, this is the one that we've been using. That's the rubric. And this is some of the data that we've received on it. So we did a t-test on all 4 areas, and we found significance in 3 of the 4 areas. So for the first one, identify the topic / subject of inquiry. This is the how the data sort of fell out. We found significance in that one between pre and post. In area 2, this is select appropriate resources required to draw conclusions. Again, significance between our 100 and 200 level classes. And then on the third one is apply resources to draw conclusions or solve problems with the degrees of freedom of 132. And that shows significance as well between our 100 and 200 levels. Now, we didn't find significance in our levels 4. That's continue to talk about and discuss. All right, so the second one is communications. So this is the one that Lee is taking, and we decided to use our Psych 290 class, which is our research methods class. The research methods class is our follow-up, kind of the practical application follow-up to our introduction to psychology class. And so these were the 4 areas that Lee and her group decided, and all of us decided to use for this area. So we want to make sure that the purpose, content, language, and execution are what are being evaluated. Purpose, clear message, content, relevant content, language, make sure that's appropriate. And then that we're conveying the message effectively. And there are going to be 2 sections. I think we haven't started this, right?
Actually, yes, we have started it, and in the research methods course, PSY 290, communication is a big component of this course. And so the two faculty members with their two sections have an assignment that deals with a personal research project. And the introduction, which involves the literature review, is being evaluated, or yes, they've evaluated it, as well as the method section. So the design for this particular assessment involves the instructors, of course, giving the lecture, and students submit their, introduction and methods section. That's before feedback. Students then submit their assignments. The instructors give the students like feedback on whether they take it or not, right? That's when we evaluate like their final product at the end of the semester, where they turn in their full APA research methods paper. And so we're trying to compare like the pre-feedback to the post-feedback. Trying to see whether students are actually learning what, is first of all being taught, and whether they incorporate like the feedback they receive, throughout the rest of the semester. So in our minds, we wanted to see effectiveness, and that's why we kind of like this design of pre and post, or comparing 100 level to 200 level students. More than just seeing like the frequency of the different achievement levels.
Thank you. And then this is a copy of the rubric. You'll notice that for 1 and 2, so for the first two areas that we're evaluating, purpose and content, purpose is going to be looked at through the introduction of the paper. The methods is going to be our content, and then both of those are going to be for language and execution. All right. Okay, so this is the one that the group that I'm kind of working with, and again, we're looking at our 1 through 3, and I didn't put our PSLOs up there, but they are, I'll just read them off to you. They are explain how psychology is a science and interdisciplinary, identify interrelationships between biological, psychological, and sociocultural processes. And then 3 is apply psychological science to everyday life and career goals. And so again, we decided that we're going to do a pre and post on this one. This is going to be same sections within the semester. So beginning of the semester, end of the semester. We're hoping that we're going to have at least 6 sections. We may have more than that. We're going to be starting this next semester. We want at least 6. And then this is the rubric for that one. Again, we did the same thing exercise science did. We try to keep the language in the rubric the same so that we're being consistent in the way that we're evaluating. But again, levels 0 through 4, 0 being no submission, 4 being proficient. And then these are the 3 areas that we're looking at. What we also did too, and I know Lee was working on this too, we wanted to overlay our general education outcomes with our program student learning outcomes. But as we were creating the assessment tool, so what I did was we met with all the instructors. We talked about the different PSLOs that we're going to be using. And then I asked them to go into their Psych 101 exams and find questions that identify these. So we created a big database with all these questions that all the instructors. And the reason why we're doing that is because we also want to line these up with our course competencies. We're trying to find alignment in all of these different areas. And as the instructors each picked questions, that's an area where I know I was doing it, where I was looking at my course competencies alignments and making sure that they were in alignment with what we want. And so we created this big database with all the questions. And then what we did was I picked what I thought was the best 30 questions, 10 for each evaluation area that we're evaluating. So a total of 30 in this assessment. And I brought it to the group and they said, we love these, we hate these. So we just kept going back and forth until we got it perfected. And so that assessment is actually ready and we're going to roll that out next semester. And I think that's it. That's all I have. Anyway, any questions? Is this the question point?
It's the Q&A part.
Should we clap for?
No.
Yeah, I have a question. As we look at those rubrics,
I didn't need to do that. Sorry.
So one of them looked like you were filling in the rubric based on the paper that they wrote. And the other ones were tests that were given. So my question is, were these assignments that were already in these classes? Or is it an additional assignment that you're doing for the program session?
The one for the communications is part of the program already, and the assessments that we do in Psych 101 are, but we're doing the same assessments we're doing. Just these are being pulled out, the unit exams that each one of the instructors takes. So that assessment is actually going to be, that assessment itself will be something new, right? That each one of the instructors will be giving their classes.
So that's gonna be like a standardized assessment that everybody's gonna use in that class then.
I think you've been using common assessments for a while.
Yes.
Yeah,
With
Um,
the critical thinking.
with the critical thinking. Well, bravo. I just want to say this was fantastic. We really, looking at big picture that we need to be measuring general education student learning outcomes and program level student learning outcomes. It's a really important conversation that I appreciate that your department has taken this approach. I drew out kind of what you were saying there. I think you were talking about your AAS, right? Your psychology degree and then program level outcomes. And I think just that story that you told, that you were able to look at those outcomes and then cluster a group of them into Psych 101, and that becomes your program level. We need to create an assessment bank. Is that a Canvas bank of questions? Or not? It doesn't matter. It doesn't
No.
have to be.
We looked at using Canvas, but we really had some difficulty with accessing data from the past. And so we're doing this all
Okay.
by hand.
So I think that would be an opportunity to explore,
Yeah.
because we have worked with other faculty where we can link single program level learning outcomes to single quiz questions. So if you have a bank in Canvas, and then Jeff has written scripts for departments where the data is pulled from multiple sections. So I think that's fantastic. And then and then looking at the way that you're also addressing critical thinking with a specific common assessment and communication, it really is a great effort towards what we should be doing. So thank you.
I've had several meetings with Jeff, and so we are ready to implement that in Canvas if we need to, or because that's the direction.
And then I guess my question is, so now what? So what has this informed how has it yet informed your practice? Looking at the difference between 100, 200 level results, looking at the difference in your pre-post exam in that paper with like an intro paper and then your final paper. What does this mean for the department for future discussions or professional development or changing curriculum or anything?
Good question. I mean, Lee, is that a question that you can answer? We've been looking at that. I mean, we have the data for the critical thinking one, so we've got a little bit of background
Right.
with that.
And you presented like 3 areas that we found significant differences between our 100 to 200 level students. The last one, evaluation and imputation of results. That's one that we did not find significant differences between our beginning and more advanced students. So,
But these are also our 101 students.
101 compared to 200.
200.
Yeah, so no differences across those two groups. So it does allow our department to see, well, what else can we do to help these students kind of think at a higher level? Not just to regurgitate back information, but to be able to look at research results and be able to explain it and interpret it. So we'll work and we'll reinforce that, a little bit more. And granted, our 200 level courses, the 2 main ones include stats and research methods. So just having 2 classes, that emphasize like the evaluation aspect of critical thinking. I think I'm okay with not having them fully be proficient because it really does require many, many more courses. I mean, I think for some folks, by the time they get to graduate school is when they actually, oh, okay, they get really good at it. So I don't know. I don't know that I know that we're gonna try to continue to work on teaching that to our students, but I don't know that we will ever necessarily reach like truly proficiency in, this higher cognitive thought process.
And of course, it depends on how you define that. That was one of the big things that we struggled with at the beginning is how do we define all these introduction, reinforce, how do we define that? So that's something that we're going to be continuing to work on. I will say this too, from an instructor level, one of the things that happened to me, and I spoke with one other instructor, and he had the same experience, was as I was going through this process, it started putting a lens on my classes and looking at the course competencies and my teaching and am I aligning? Like, am I doing what I need to do from an instructor level to make sure that I'm aligning my course up to these things? And I've made changes to my course just from this process. So that's one of the benefits I've gotten out of it.
Oh, I'm gonna check online. I think that I did see a question. Let me ask, can you talk a little bit about your process of moving the 4 Cs with your PSLOs?
There was no magic to it. We laid them all out. We just, we laid all our general and we in a meeting. And that was one of the great things about the buy-in is that Lee has been great and our department has been great. Every department meeting, we dedicate time to this, and then we also spend time outside of those meetings as well. But we just laid them out and started having kind of discussion and a brainstorm about where these go and how they fit, and it was that kind of led us to, I think, to where these started to align. You start to see it, as you line them up, you start to see, oh, okay, yeah, these things kind of go with these. But unless we actually took the time to sit down as a faculty and to look at them and to say, how does it, that was really the important part.
Right. Some of the gen eds are so general, like communication, right? You could take communication and apply it to any class. We just found that our research methods class, because they do, one of the core competencies is for them to be able to express their own research studies in written form and in an oral presentation. So that was like a obvious alignment of communication. So you could do that. You could just look at the objectives and see where you can kind of make things mesh together, because students are going to be overloaded with assessments if we don't do that. Because in our AA, with emphasis in psychology, there are like 11 or 12 outcomes, right? Our gen ed 4, and it might change to more than that. So with all of those different outcomes, we have to be more efficient with how we assess. So that was our thinking.